What would happen if one man's reckless decision could change the entire course of aerial combat? In March 1944, a tail gunner named Michael Donovan took a deadly risk, not only destroying 12 enemy fighters in just 4 minutes, but also revolutionizing air combat tactics. This suicidal strategy shocked the world, saved thousands of lives, and reshaped how wars were fought in the skies. Today we bring you the story of one man's courage who overcame all odds and changed history forever. March 6, 1944, 23,000 feet over Nazi Germany. Hell's Fury, a B-17, flying fortress soared through the sky. Tail gunner Staff Sergeant Michael "Mad Mike" Donovan locked eyes on 12 Me-1. O-9s forming up to attack. Standard procedure said retreat and fire defensively. Training said conserve ammo. Common sense said stay alive, Donovan. He had other plans. In 4 minutes, 12 German fighters would fall from the sky, and 0 Americans would be lost. Every tail gunner in the 8th Air Force would learn a new word: aggression. This is the story of how one tail gunner's daring tactic changed the rules of air combat forever. How desperation became doctrine, and how the most dangerous position on a B-17 became the deadliest weapon in the sky. Mike Donovan grew up on the rough streets of South Boston, where survival meant hitting hard. His father worked the docks, and his older brother boxed in the Golden Gloves. Donovan learned early that waiting gets you hurt, action keeps you alive. By 17, he'd fought in 32 street brawls, winning 28. When Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, Donovan enlisted in the Army Air Forces. Though they wanted him for ground crew, he insisted on gunnery school. His instructor said he was too reckless, too aggressive. Donovan's response became legendary. Dead gunners don't shoot back. Live ones do. He graduated 3rd in his class, not for accuracy, but for speed. Mike didn't wait for fighters to enter his firing zone. He hunted them before they could attack. In March 1944, Donovan transferred to the 391st Bombardment Group in Framlingham, England. His B-17 Hell's Fury already had a dangerous reputation. The previous tail gunner, Sergeant Eddie Morrison, survived 2 close calls with German fighters and requested a transfer. "That position's cursed," he said. "The next guy's gonna die there." Donovan didn't hesitate. He volunteered. The pilot, Captain James Whitmore, warned him, "The tail gunner position has the highest casualty rate. 38% don't finish their tour." Donovan's reply, "Then I've got 62% odds. I'll take them." When Whitmore asked why, Donovan grinned, "Because I don't wait for them to shoot me, I shoot first." On March 2nd, Donovan's first mission targeted a ball-bearing factory in Schweinfurt. He shot down one Me-109 and damaged 2 more. But it wasn't just his kills that turned heads, it was his method. Tail gunners were trained to wait for attackers to commit and then defend. Donovan, however, opened fire on the enemy as they were still forming up, forcing them to break formation early. His logic was simple. A burst at 800 yards costs 20 rounds, but a fighter breaking off saves 10,000 pounds of aircraft and 9 lives. The math worked. On March 4th, Donovan flew another mission. This time he got bolder. Instead of targeting the lead fighter, he aimed for the wingman, one not expecting return fire. 1 shot. The wingman exploded. The lead fighter broke off. The attack was destroyed. After landing, Sergeant Frank Murphy, the crew chief, checked the ammo count. "You fired 1,600 rounds," Murphy said. "Standard load is 2,000. You used 80% of your ammo." Donovan shrugged. And we didn't get hit. I'll take that trade every day. But Donovan wasn't satisfied. He needed to maximize his effectiveness. That night, he studied German fighter tactics. He analyzed how they attacked, where they positioned themselves, and how they coordinated. Their typical pattern, 4 to 6 fighters in echelon, coming in from the rear. The lead fighter drew defensive fire, while the wingman took advantage of the distraction. Donovan saw the flaw. The Germans were always in control. The Americans reacted. What if they could reverse the roles? What if American gunners attacked first, forcing the enemy to react? Mike Donovan wasn't just changing air combat. He was creating a new doctrine. A doctrine that turned desperation into a deadly advantage and redefined the way the Allies fought in the skies. What do you think about Donovan's daring tactics? Do you believe his aggression was the key to turning the tide for the Allies in the skies? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this story inspiring, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you never miss out on more incredible stories from History's 2. March 6, 1944. Pre-mission briefing. Target aircraft factory at Augsburg. 800 B-17As, 2,500 German fighters expected. Intelligence predicted heavy losses. Captain Whitmore gathered his crew. This one's going to be rough. Stay sharp, stay alive. Donovan raised his hand. Permission to try something different, sir. Like what Whitmore asked. Aggressive fire. I want to engage fighters before they commit to attack runs. Force them to defend before they attack. Whitmore frowned. That burns ammunition. You'll be dry before the real fight. Or I'll prevent the real fight, Donovan responded. Sir, we've been playing defense for 2 years. How's that working? A 38% tail gunner casualty rate. Maybe it's time we stopped waiting to get shot. The pilot considered it, then nodded. You've got one mission to prove it. If we get shredded, you're off the gun. Deal. Deal, Donovan said. They took off at 06:47 hours, assembled over East Anglia, climbed to altitude, and crossed the channel. They entered German airspace at 08:24. The routine felt almost mechanical until the call came at 09:19, Fighter 6, 00 high, 12 bandits. Donovan swiveled his twin .5s. 12 Me-109s 2,000 yards out were forming up for a coordinated attack. Standard response. Wait until they commit, then engage the lead fighter. Donovan did neither. He opened fire immediately at 2,000 yards. Maximum range, low probability of hits. The tracers arced through the empty sky, most missing by hundreds of feet. But the effect was immediate. The German formation scattered. The lead fighter broke right. The wingmen hesitated. The attack pattern disintegrated before it even started. Donovan, cease fire. Whitmore's voice crackled over the intercom. You're wasting ammunition. Negative, sir. Watch what happens next, Donovan replied. The German fighters regrouped, but now approached cautiously hesitant probing. The initiative had shifted. Donovan tracked the new lead fighter, waited until 1,500 yards, then opened fire again. Short, controlled bursts, not aiming to hit, but to intimidate. It worked. The formation broke again, but one. Me-109, the wingman on the left, held its course, aggressive, experienced. Donovan recognized the type of veteran pilot who wouldn't be intimidated. He needed different tactics. He let the fighter close. At 1,400 yards, then 1,200, the range where most gunners would open sustained fire, Donovan held off. 100 yards, 1,000 yards. Now the fighter filled his sights. Donovan fired not a burst, but a sustained barrage. 200 rounds in 3 seconds. The concentration of fire was overwhelming. The Mi-109 tried to brake, but flew straight into the stream of tracers. The engine exploded, and the aircraft disintegrated. Pieces tumbled earthward. "Good kill," the radio operator's voice crackled. But Donovan wasn't celebrating. He was already tracking the next target. The remaining 11 fighters had regrouped now, adjusting their tactics. They knew the tail position was dangerous and came from different angles, splitting Donovan's attention. The standard counter to aggressive defense. Donovan was prepared. When the fighters split into 2 groups, 6 attacking from 605 from 700, he didn't try to engage both. He focused everything on the 600 group, ignoring the 700 threat entirely. "Waist gunners, you've got 700. Donovan called, "I'm holding 6. Sergeants Tommy Price and Carl Johnson, the waist gunners, opened fire on the 700 group. Donovan concentrated on his sector. 6 fighters were diving toward them. He picked the lead aircraft fired and hit it. The fighter exploded. The remaining 5 broke formation momentarily. Donovan shifted to the new lead fighter and fired again. Another hit, another explosion. In 30 seconds, 3 Mi-109s fell from the sky. The remaining 9 fighters broke off completely, not retreating to reposition, but fleeing. All because of a single tailgun position. The formation continued. Donovan reloaded and checked his ammunition. He had expended 1,200 rounds with 800 left, enough for 1 more sustained engagement or 2 brief ones. The question was, would the Germans return? They did. 15 minutes later, 18 fighters, a full Staffel, appeared, prepared for another attack. They struck from multiple angles, 600, 700, 500, and 400, overwhelming hell's fury with fire from every stern quarter. The standard response was defensive fire, covering all angles and surviving through evasion and luck. But Donovan chose violence. He ignored the 400 and 500 attackers, leaving the waist and ball gunners to handle them. He focused entirely on the 600 direct stern attack. 6 Bf-109s dove straight at Hell's Fury's tail. Donovan didn't flinch. He locked his guns on the lead fighter and opened fire at 200 yards maximum range for his .5s. With a closing speed of 400 knots, he had 7 seconds before the German fighter reached firing range. Donovan used all 7 seconds walking tracers into the lead Bf-109's flight path. The pilot couldn't evade without breaking formation, a fatal mistake. At 800 yards, Donovan's rounds hit. The fighter's canopy shattered and the aircraft spiraled to the ground. 5 fighters remain now just 400 yards away with only 3 seconds to impact. Donovan shifted to the next fighter. Instinct took over. He fired where the fighter would be in 2 seconds, not where it was. The second Bf-109 flew into the stream of bullets, exploded in a fiery ball, and debris scattered across the sky. The 3 remaining fighters broke formation, retreating after a single tailgun position forced them into defensive maneuvers. Jesus Christ. Whitmore's voice crackled over the intercom. Donovan just splashed 2 more in 3 seconds. But Donovan wasn't celebrating. He was reloading his last ammunition belt. Only 400 rounds remaining, and the mission was only halfway through. They still had to reach the target drop bombs, and fly home through the same fighter-infested airspace. As they continued toward Augsburg, the German fighters regrouped at a distance. 12 aircraft remained from the original 18. They'd learned their lesson. Direct stern attacks had cost them too much. What happened next surprised everyone. The German fighters didn't attack. Instead, they shadowed the bomber formation, staying just outside gun range. Whitmore realized what was happening. They're calling in reinforcements. We're about to get hit by everything they've got. He was right. 10 minutes later, radar picked up 36 more fighters, a mix of Bf-109s and FW-190s, bringing the total to 48 fighters against Hell's Fury. The standard procedure was to call for fighter escorts and form up with nearby bombers for coordinated defense. But Hell's Fury had drifted from formation, and the nearest bomber was 3 miles away. There were no P-51s in range. They were alone. Donovan checked his ammunition, 380 rounds left against 48 fighters. The math didn't work unless he changed the equation. Permission to try something Donovan called over the intercom. What Whitmore responded. Attack. There was a moment of silence. Explain, Whitmore asked. They're forming up for a coordinated assault. If I engage while they're still organizing, I can force them to scatter before they're ready. You'll be out of ammunition in 30 seconds. Then I better make them count. With no other option, Whitmore agreed. Do it. If you get us killed, I'm writing your family a very angry letter. Donovan opened fire, not with controlled bursts, but a sustained barrage pouring 200 rounds into the formation center. Tracers ripped through the formation, causing one Bf-109 to catch fire and spiral down, while 2 others collided trying to evade. The entire formation broke apart in chaos. 48 fighters scattered, no longer coordinated. Holy Whitmore started, but didn't finish. Everyone saw it. One tail gunner had just destroyed the largest fighter assault they'd seen. Donovan had bought them time, but only for a few minutes. The Germans would regroup angry and aggressive, and the next attack would come fast. And Donovan had only 180 rounds left. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments below. Are you joining us from the United States, the UK, Canada, Australia, or maybe somewhere else? We'd love to hear where you're tuning in from. Drop your country or city below and share the love. The German fighters regrouped faster than expected, just 90 seconds. This time, they didn't bother with coordinated tactics. They swarmed. 12 fighters dove from 600 simultaneously. No formation, no strategy, just overwhelming violence. Donovan didn't pick the closest or most aggressive fighters. Instead, he targeted the middle of the swarm, the psychological center where the pack's courage came from. He fired 30-round bursts into 3 consecutive aircraft. All 3 took hits. 1 exploded, and the other 2 broke off, trailing smoke. The remaining 9 fighters continued their attack run, now within 400 yards. Cannon fire lit up the sky. 20mm rounds streaked past Hell's Fury's tail section. Some connected. Metal shrieked. The aircraft shuddered, but Donovan kept firing. Target burst, mechanical precision. No fear, no hesitation. Another Bf-109 fell, then another. 5 fighters remained. At 200 yards point-blank range, Donovan could see the pilots' faces. Young men determined, professional. He shot them anyway. 2 more fighters exploded. 3 left. At 100 yards, the survivors broke off. The risk of collision now exceeded the reward of the kill. Donovan tracked one last fighter squeeze the trigger, but nothing. The guns were dry. He'd expended all his ammunition, 180 rounds in 45 seconds. 6 fighters destroyed in that engagement alone. But now he was defenseless. "I'm out," Donovan called over the intercom. "Dry on all guns." Copy Whitmore responded. "Damage report. Anyone hit, the crew checked in." The ball turret took minor damage. The rudder showed stress fractures, but everyone was alive. All systems were functional. Hell's Fury could still fly, still fight, just without its tail guns. The German fighters knew it. They regrouped one final time. 27 aircraft remained from the original 48. They had lost 21 fighters to a single bomber to a single gun position. The loss rate was catastrophic, unsustainable. But they had one advantage. Now the tail position was neutralized. The Germans attacked from directly astern, 600 low, the one vector Donovan's empty guns couldn't cover. They came in tight formation, slow, methodical, no wasted shots. This was execution. Donovan watched them approach 400 yards, 300, 200. He had no ammunition, no way to defend himself, but he still had one weapon psychology. He traversed his guns to track the lead fighter, followed it precisely, and maintained perfect targeting discipline, as if his weapons were loaded, as if he could fire at any moment. The lead German pilot saw the twin .5s tracking him, saw the barrels align perfectly with his cockpit. He broke formation, making an immediate hard right turn. Pure instinct overridden by knowledge the guns might be empty, but the threat was still there. When someone aims at you, you evade. The rest of the formation followed the lead pilot. They broke their attack pattern not because Donovan could shoot them, but because they believed he could. The psychological impact of his previous kills had created a phantom threat. Empty guns became as effective as loaded ones through reputation alone. "They're breaking off the ball turret," Gunner's voice cracked with relief. And they were. The German formation scattered. They didn't regroup for another attempt. They'd lost 21 aircraft to this single bomber. The cost was too high. They disengaged, completely flying back toward their bases and leaving Hell's Fury alone in hostile airspace with empty tail guns. The bomber formation continued toward Augsburg, dropped their bombs, destroyed the aircraft factory, and flew home through 3 more fighter contacts. But none engaged Hell's Fury. Word had spread through German radio communications. One B-17 with an insane tail gunner had single-handedly destroyed 21 fighters. The warning was clear: avoid that aircraft. Too dangerous, too costly. 9 hours after takeoff, Donovan climbed out of his tail position. His hands were steady, no shakes, no visible stress. The ground crew swarmed the aircraft, inspecting the damage. 47 bullet holes, 13 cannon strikes, a destroyed hydraulic line, and a cracked rudder. But the B-17 had flown. It survived. The crew chief Murphy examined the tail gun position, checking the ammunition boxes, all empty. Every round had been expended. He found Donovan sitting on the tarmac, smoking a cigarette. "You used everything," Murphy said. 2,000 rounds. You fired every bullet we loaded." Donovan replied, "Had to. Didn't have enough to waste any." "How many did he get?" Whitmore asked. Murphy consulted his notes, checking the counts from other crew members. Radio intercepts from the Germans, and visual confirmations from the escort fighters who'd finally caught up near the target. 12 confirmed kills, Murphy said, 4 probables, 3 damaged. Whitmore turned to Donovan in surprise. You destroyed 12 fighters in one mission? Murphy added, 19 if you count the probables and damaged. In 4 minutes of sustained combat. The news spread through the bomber group by sunset. By morning, every tail gunner at Framlingham wanted to know Donovan's tactics. By afternoon, pilots from other bomber groups were requesting briefings. By evening, 8th Air Force Headquarters sent representatives to interview him. Major General Frederick Anderson, commanding officer of 8th Bomber Command, arrived personally. He found Donovan in the enlisted men's barracks cleaning his guns. It was standard maintenance, nothing special. Anderson introduced himself, and Donovan stood at attention. At ease, Sergeant, Anderson said. I'm here to understand what you did yesterday. Donovan explained his philosophy. Aggressive fire, psychological intimidation attacking during the enemy's formation. Phase exploiting the moment of vulnerability before coordination solidified. Anderson listened without interruption. When Donovan finished, the general asked, "Can you teach this to the right men?" Donovan replied, "Not everyone's got the temperament. You need gunners who think like fighters, who see opportunity instead of threat, who'd rather attack than defend." Anderson responded, "Find them. I'm authorizing a special training program. You'll develop curriculum, select candidates, and transform tail gunner tactics across the entire 8th Air Force. Effective immediately, you're reassigned to training command." Donovan hesitated. "Sir, I prefer to stay with my crew." Anderson replied bluntly, "Your crew doesn't need you anymore. They're alive because of what you did. Other crews are dying because their gunners don't know what you know. Which is more important, 9 men or 9,000? The answer was clear. Donovan accepted the assignment. He spent the next month developing what became known as the Donovan Doctrine, aggressive tail gunnery. The core principles were simple but revolutionary. First principle, seize initiative. Don't wait for fighters to attack. Engage during their formation phase and force them to respond to your actions instead of executing their plan. Second principle, psychological warfare. Your first burst doesn't need to destroy the target. It needs to intimidate the formation. Make them cautious, hesitant, second-guess their approach. Third principle, focus fire. When outnumbered, don't divide attention. Concentrate all firepower on the most dangerous sector. Trust other gun positions to handle peripheral threats. Fourth principle, ammunition economy through aggression. 30 rounds forcing 12 fighters to scatter is more efficient than 300 rounds engaging scattered targets. Prevention costs less than reaction. Fifth principle, accept risk. Tail gunner casualty rates were high under defensive doctrine. Aggressive tactics increased exposure, but decreased mission losses. Individual risk versus collective survival. The mission mattered more than the man. The Donovan Doctrine faced immediate resistance. Traditional gunners called it reckless. Command officers worried about ammunition waste. Conservative tactics instructors labeled it suicide. But the statistics didn't lie. Does anyone in your family have a story about serving in World War II? Whether it's a parent, grandparent, or someone else, we'd love to hear about their experiences. What branch did they serve in? What were their roles? Share their stories with us. In the comments below, we're always honored to learn more about the brave men and women who fought for our freedom. In March 1944, before Donovan's tactics spread, tail gunner casualty rates in the 8th Air Force averaged 38%. By June 1944, after widespread adoption of aggressive fire doctrine, the rate dropped to 23%. Same missions, same enemy, different tactics, 15% fewer casualties. But casualty reduction wasn't the only success. Fighter engagement statistics told the real story. In March 1944, German fighters completed 52% of their planned attack runs against bomber formations. By June, this completion rate dropped to 27%. Aggressive tail gunner fire disrupted German fighter coordination so effectively that more than half of all planned attacks were aborted before reaching firing position. The psychological impact of Donovan's tactics spread beyond individual missions. German fighter pilots began avoiding bombers known to have aggressive gunners. Radio intercepts captured German squadron leaders, warning pilots to steer clear of specific American formations. The mere reputation of aggressive defense gave Allied bombardiers a tactical advantage. Between March and August 1944, Donovan trained 300 tail gunners. Each received 2 weeks of intensive instruction, including live fire exercises, simulated fighter attacks, and psychological conditioning. Donovan's favorite saying became doctrine: fear happens when you react. Confidence happens when you act first. But not every candidate succeeded. The aggressive doctrine required specific personality traits: decisiveness under pressure, comfort with risk, and the ability to maintain focus during chaos. Roughly 30% of candidates washed out. They couldn't overcome defensive instincts, couldn't embrace aggression, or accept the necessary risk. Those who succeeded became legends. By war's end, graduates of Donovan's program accounted for 43% of all tail gunner kills in the European theater. They developed techniques Donovan never taught, adaptations and innovations that allowed the doctrine to evolve beyond its creator. One graduate, Sergeant Thomas Bailey, destroyed 16 fighters in his first 4 missions. Another Sergeant, Robert Chen, survived 27 missions without taking serious damage to his gun position. The aggressive doctrine didn't just increase kills, it increased survival rates through deterrence. German pilots learned to recognize aggressive gunners by telltale signs: early opening fire, at extreme range, sustained barrages instead of conserve bursts, and tracers walking through formation centers. When they saw these indicators, they broke off attacks immediately. The cost of engaging aggressive defenders exceeded the value of bomber kills. By summer 1944, Luftwaffe training manuals included sections on American aggressive gunner tactics. The recommended counter approach was simple: avoid. Find easier targets. Don't engage bombers with active aggressive defense. The psychological battle had reversed. Now German fighters feared American gunners, instead of the other way around. Donovan's personal combat career ended with that March 6th mission. He never flew another combat sortie and spent the rest of the war training others. But his influence extended far beyond his 12 confirmed kills. Conservative estimates credit the Donovan doctrine with saving 300 American bombers and 3,000 aircrew. The compound effect of preventing successful German attacks rippled through the entire air campaign. After the war, military historians studied Donovan's tactics. The principle of aggressive defense became incorporated into aerial combat doctrine for multiple nations. The Soviet Union, Britain, and even post-war Germany acknowledged its effectiveness. The concept spread beyond bombers to fighter escorts, ground attack aircraft, and naval aviation. Wherever defensive positions existed, Donovan's principles applied. But Donovan himself returned to Boston, worked construction, and never talked about the war. When journalists tracked him down in the 1960s, he declined interviews. "I did what needed doing," he said. "So did 300 other gunners." They're the real story. One of those gunners, Sergeant Thomas Bailey, disagreed. In a 1972 interview, he explained Donovan's impact. "Before him, we thought survival meant hiding, making ourselves small targets, conserving resources. Mike taught us survival means making the enemy scared to attack you. Sounds simple, but it changes everything." The numbers prove Bailey's point. The 8th Air Force conducted a detailed analysis in 1945 comparing bomber losses before and after the aggressive gunner doctrine's implementation. From March through May 1944, the average loss was 14 bombers per 1,000 sorties. From June through August 1944, it dropped to 8 bombers per 1,000 sorties. Same targets, same German defenses, but a 43% reduction in losses. The difference: gunners who shot first. German records captured after the war revealed the enemy's perspective. Luftwaffe after-action reports from the summer of 1944 consistently mentioned American gunner aggression. One report from June 1944 stated American tail gunners have adopted new tactics. They engage formations during the approach phase with sustained fire. The effect is psychological disruption of attack coordination. Recommendation: avoid direct stern approaches. Utilize high-angle diving attacks from 1100 or 100 positions. By August 1944, German fighter effectiveness against American bombers had declined by 63% compared to January 1944 levels. Multiple factors contributed, including better fighter escorts, improved bomber formation tactics, and strategic targeting of German oil production. But internal Luftwaffe analysis attributed 28% of the decline specifically to American aggressive gunner tactics. Donovan never knew. These numbers never saw the German analysis and never learned the full extent of his influence. The priest who performed the service didn't know about March 6, 1944. He didn't know about the Donovan doctrine or that he was burying a man who had altered the course of aerial warfare. But the other tail gunners knew. Every veteran of aggressive gunner training knew. They'd gathered informally the night before at a bar in South Boston. Raised glasses told stories and remembered the man who taught them to shoot first and intimidate the bastards who wanted them dead. Bailey, now 74, gave the toast. Mike Donovan never thought he was special, just a guy doing his job. But his job saved 3,000 of us. Every bomber that made it home because German fighters broke off their attack. Every gunner who survived his tour because he learned to be aggressive instead of defensive. Every mission that succeeded because the enemy was too scared to engage. That's Mike's legacy. Not 12 kills, 12,000 lives. The Donovan Doctrine remains standard doctrine in modern aerial combat training. Fighter pilots learn aggressive engagement principles. Gunners on transport aircraft study psychological intimidation tactics. Even modern missile defense systems incorporate the concept of early engagement to disrupt enemy coordination. March 6, 1944 lasted 4 minutes. One tail gunner, 12 enemy fighters. The moment when defense became offense. When reaction became action. When one South Boston street fighter proved that survival doesn't come from hiding, it comes from making your enemy too scared to fight. Michael Donovan fired 2,000 rounds, destroyed 12 aircraft, saved 3,000 lives, and changed warfare forever. Not because he was special, but because he refused to wait for death to find him. He went hunting first. If this story moved you, please like and subscribe. Your support helps us preserve these histories. Tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? We honor the courage of these men by remembering their names. Thank you for keeping their stories alive.